everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Mark Astor. Mark is a trailblazing attorney and the founder of Drug and Alcohol Attorneys and Baker Act Attorneys, the only law firm in the United States solely dedicated to mental health and addiction law. For more than 25 years, Mark has helped families navigate life-saving legal processes such as the Baker Act, the Marchman Act, and the guardianships, often during some of the most difficult moments in their lives. Through his work, Mark has developed a unique approach that combines legal expertise with compassion, helping families turn complex legal systems into the pathways towards recovery and healing. He is also the host of the podcast, The Journey with Mark Astor, a podcast that explores the real stories behind leadership, recovery, personal growth, and the setbacks that often shape who we become. Today, we'll explore Mark's journey, discuss the important role the legal system can play in mental health and addiction recovery, and talk about how law can be used not just for justice, but as a powerful tool for hope and change. You can find Mark by going to his website, mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com, or by emailing him at mark@astor. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to set this back up. You can find Mark by going to his website, mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com, or by emailing him at mark@astors, IMOVITCH law.com, or by phone at 561-517-9405. And you can follow his podcast at The Journey with Mark Astor. Hello, Mark. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Olivia, so good to see you. Always enjoy your company. Thank you for having me as a guest.
I am really excited to have you as a guest and dive into your journey, what drives you, how you've shaped and built what you have built, and all the good things. And I want to start off with, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Mark Astor?
You know, I'm so glad you started with this question, because my wife and I were actually having this very conversation this morning with our chief operating officer on what does the future look like. And for me, at 59 years of age, and I feel like I'm on the downside of whatever time, the good man above has left for me, I think for us setting goals, what I really want. And I think in terms of success, it's being able to design my life so I can live it the way I need to live it and want to live it. And what goals I need, I want, and how do and really creating a roadmap to get there. So I think that's what success is about.
I think that's so important too, because I talk quite frequently about identifying what success looks like to you, but also understanding the one constant we have in life is change. And it can be an awesome tool, and sometimes it can be scary, but identifying where we are today and what we want that roadmap to look like you said, not only what the destination is, but identifying those pillars along the way and saying, this would be successful. If we got here, this would be great. And then celebrating those moments as well, because it's not just about the end goalpost, but it's about all the things that shape us along the way too.
Yeah, it's so true. But it took me a little while. It took me getting a little bit older to really, sit down and think about what I wanted out of life. Otherwise, if you don't set goals and you don't define what success looks for you, because it looks different for everybody, then, you're like a ship, that's just sort of drifting around the ocean with no port to go to, right? You can't move in any direction. You don't know where you're going.
Yeah. And I love how you used a sailing analogy with that.
Yes, how appropriate for you. I didn't think about it, but it's so relevant for you.
It's like sitting here and I'm like, wow, he's probably not even realizing the irony
I
of this
didn't,
right
but I
now.
thought about it afterwards, and I'm like, if anybody understands that, it's definitely Olivia.
Mark, I want to dive into where it all began for you, because you've also seen law from both sides of things, being a prosecutor, then starting your own law firm. So in you and with your career in the area of law that most attorneys also never touch. They never touch mental health. They never touch addiction. What first led you down this path, and what made you decide to dedicate your entire practice to helping families navigate these deeply personal crises?
Yeah, so I think we've got to go back a little in time. I was a prosecutor from 1994 to 1999, and it was my first job out of law school. I'd interned in '93, and I was, when they hired me, I was really gung ho. Lock them all up, lock all the bad people up, right? And that was fine because the mandate, in our criminal justice system, and it is even today, is to punish first and rehabilitate second, and it's been that way as long as I've been around, and it's my 32nd year of practice. Pretty early on, I realized that there was something off with our criminal justice system, which was because I was seeing the same faces over and over again, and all these people had behavioral health issues, and they didn't have access to treatment. Now, back then, we didn't have some of what I call diversionary courts that we have now. So here in Florida, we have mental health court, we have drug court, we have veterans court, right? We take certain crimes, certain individuals, and we put them into a treatment program. They go through it, and then the charges get dropped. Well, back in the 90s, we didn't have any of that. And if you kept coming back, eventually we just had no choice but to lock you up for as long as we could, right? Punish first, rehabilitate second. So I left in 1999. I did some defense work. I'll be honest with you, I really lost my passion for practicing law after that, because as a government lawyer, I didn't make any money. I barely made some money. The first 2 years out of law school, I lived at home with my parents. But I got a lot of personal satisfaction out of what I did. Especially the last year and a half, I was a prosecutor, and I was prosecuting violent felony offenders, or if it was a murder case, I had the family of a decedent. And giving those people some closure, some justice, gave me tremendous personal satisfaction. But I did 200 jury trials in 5 years, which is an insane amount of jury trials in 5 years. That's a lot I was in trial all the time, and it's exhausting, right? You're preparing at night, you're working on the weekends, and I was just fried after 5 years. And like I said, I did defense work. I made a lot more money. I was completely miserable. I got married at 34. I was divorced at 35. And my life went on quite a bit of a tailspin. I took a year off in '04 after I gotten divorced. I spent a year in DC. I went back to school, got my master's in law, also worked on a presidential campaign, which was an amazing experience, but my candidate didn't win, so I had to come back home. 2010, I took what little I had left after the '08 crash, ran off to California for 3 years, and basically spent 3 years taking and failing the California bar, working out and enjoying the things that the material man enjoys when it comes to the single life. And I'll leave that to your imagination without getting into the sordid details. But after 3 years, when I was tapped out, I had to come home. And I actually studied for the California bar one more time. I actually studied at a local library here, where ironically is where I opened up the law firm. So I took the bar one more time, I failed it, and then I met somebody that basically changed the direction of my life. So I got invited to a breakfast meeting and there was a presenter there. His name is R. John Robbins. And think of R. John Robbins as the Tony Robbins of the legal profession. And what he has a company that teaches lawyers the business side of being a lawyer, which is the one thing they don't teach any law student at any law school anywhere in the country. They barely teach us enough law to be able to get through the bar exam, right? So I listened to him speak, and he talked all about the business side of practicing law. And that really resonated with me because I came from an entrepreneurial background. My dad left school at 14, my mother left school at 16. So going to law school was a really big deal in my family because it had never happened before. But my dad built businesses. Some worked, some didn't. Some made money, and some, towards the end of his life, left him, without any. And it was very hard to see. But basically, I saw the guy speak for an hour and a half, and I begged him for a job. And he hired me. And I spent a year there. Learning all about the business side of practicing law. But what I didn't realize when I went to work for him was that his company is a personal growth company for lawyers. And they believe that personal growth has to precede financial growth. And I realized two very important things when I was there. Number one, that the reason I was broke and had nobody special in my life was because I had failed to take 100% responsibility for my decisions. And number two, I didn't have anybody that I was really trying to help. And so after a year there, I decided to open up my own law firm. I sat down in the very same library that I had when I studied for the bar exam for the third time. I had no money, but they had free Wi-Fi at their library, and they had a little coffee shop that served pretty decent coffee. And I got really cheap business cards made at Vistaprint. And I just started calling people, smiling and dialing. And I called anybody and everybody that I knew. And you got to remember, I hadn't lived in Florida for 3 years. I hadn't practiced law in close to 5 or 6. And I just started calling people and running around to treatment centers, introducing myself, telling people I had this idea to build a law firm, helping, families, with adult children who had, substance use and mental health disorders. And it took 14 months before anybody sent me the kind of case, the kind of case that we take on a daily basis now. So in the meantime, I took criminal cases. I took family law cases. I represented a student athlete here in Florida who got himself in a bit of hot water with a female student. 11 months in, I lost my dad, and just trying to get enough money together to pay for a funeral was a real struggle. And because my mom's still alive, I had to buy a plot for her. So my dad's I paid for, and my mother's I financed for 5 years. And every month for 5 years, I paid off her where she's going to be laid to rest. 2 days after I buried him, I had a family member that completely fell off the wagon and ended up getting sucked into Florida's mental health system. And I just put my nose down, and I was able to get a really small office towards the end of the first year. And I met my wife in 2017. And really for the next 6 years, we just hustled into everything, sales, marketing, meeting with clients, drafting pleadings, running to courthouses. I mean, I was driving 25,000 miles a year. But that part of my life, Olivia, took me a little bit longer to take responsibility for, because when I met her in 17, I said, listen, I'm letting you know, if you're looking to get married again, because she'd already been married and had her children, I said, you got the wrong guy. I will never get married again. We are coming up, we just had our second wedding anniversary, and I'm going to tell you, Olivia, marrying my wife is the single best decision I've ever made. Without question, there's not even a close second. I could not have built this business without. And this morning we had a whole discussion about success and goals. And I had one idea, and she had another idea. And as is typical, she was right and I was wrong. So we're going to follow her plan, because whenever we've done things my way, for the most part, it's turned out, I wouldn't say I'm always wrong, but when there's a competing interest between my wife and I, she's nearly always right. And reminds me too. So we now have a team of about 15 people. We helped more people than ever last year, and we're on track to help even more people this year. And because I have people that answer the phones and do the legal work and run to court, I can actually sit here without the phone blowing up. Because 5 years ago, I couldn't have done a podcast. The phone would have been ringing off the hook. I wouldn't have been able to sit here and have a conversation with you.
Well, it's also about, like you brought up, right? There's the business of law. There's the impact you can make by leveraging the law and being there as a helping hand. There's so many aspects of it. So I want to dive more into what you do with your work. But before I do that, I think a really important thing that you brought up is the business side of law that really, as you mentioned, does not get talked about when you talk about going to law school, when you graduate with your law degree. I mean, my sister and brother-in-law are both lawyers. They went through law school and completed during COVID. And I could tell you, because I was there listening to all the stress of going to law school, especially when COVID hit, and then taking the bar. They don't talk about the business of having a practice, running your practice, all of that. So for you, as you have started this practice and have been growing it, what aspect do you think for any attorney out there is really important to take in consideration of the concept of the business side of law?
Well, I think unless you're somebody who has a business background, you have to appreciate the fact that you do not know how to run a business. And from a, quote, business perspective, there's no difference between my law firm, a restaurant, a hotel, and a car dealership. We're all selling something. I might be selling, I'm selling legal services, and obviously a restaurant is selling food, a car dealership is selling cars. But the point is, from a business perspective, they are all the same. And, as lawyers, I mean, if you ask 10 lawyers, what does your business do? Or what is the business of running a law firm? I guarantee you that 9 of them won't know. They just won't know, right? The business of a law firm is to sell legal services. My practice gets the work done, but my business sells legal services, which means obviously I have to have marketing, and I have to be able to track all that marketing, and I might have a team that handles incoming sales calls. But, so I spent a year, ironically, I spent a year working for, Arjun Robbins, and 2 years ago I went back as a client. So I had enough knowledge to get me through the first 8 years, and I needed somebody else to help me get over the hump. So, I mean, we went through their program. We have a fractional CEO and a fractional CFO. About 3 months ago, we hired a full-time chief operating officer, and she's been building systems and policies and procedures so the business can start to run without us. And I just focus on, for the most part, sales and marketing, which is the bit of the business I enjoy. Every once in a while, I get sucked back into handling a case. Maybe it's a VIP, maybe, we have a conflict and somebody has to go cover a hearing, and I don't mind doing it. But I don't have the desire to go running to court anymore. It's not something I enjoy anymore. I love the business side of what we do. That I find exciting, because even though it's a business, the way we've grown the business is figuring out how to help more people. If we help more people, we'll make more money, versus we want to try and make more money. So we like I said, personal growth precedes financial growth. Focus on helping more people, and as a result, you will make more money.
So that being said as well, you just said focusing on helping more people will bring you more money. Right now, how are you focusing on helping the most amount of people in the most impactful way possible?
Well, I think a couple of things, Olivia. I mean, obviously, our mission is very, very clear. We're very focused on what we do, right? People ask me what I do. I don't tell them I'm a lawyer. Say I own a business, with the mission to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. And it's right on the front of the website. And I've said it I've said it 1,000 times. And of course, the natural follow-up question is, well, how do you do that? Well, I'm a lawyer. I have a business, a law firm business, and then I explain how it works. So having the mission and being focused on that, I think, is important. I think also, setting goals is so important. Many years ago, I listened to an audiobook called The Strangest Secret by a guy called Earl Nightingale. I think that's his name, Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. It's literally a 45-minute audiobook. And it was made in the 60s. I mean, when it plays, you can hear that, like, I'm not going to age myself, but when I was a kid, I used to listen to music. I had a record player, right, that had these like plastic discs that are now worth an absolute small fortune, right? Something else I should have kept. But you can hear it crackling in the background, right? It's so old. But he talks about the strangest secret, and what he discovered through his research was that the key, one of the major keys to success is setting goals. Right. So if it's like anything, if you know how many people that you want to help, then you can build your marketing and your sales team around helping those people. Right. Now I know what I need to spend to make the phone ring. I know roughly what my conversion percentage is. So if I want to help 30 people and the conversion rate is 30%, I need 100 phone calls. Okay, how much does it cost me to make the phone ring 100 times? So all of that is built around the fact that I have certain goals. And so in September of 2025, I sat down with our C-suite and we said, okay, this is what we look like. We'll finish up in 25. What do we want to do in 26? What looks like reasonable goals? Okay, right. And we sat down and we wrote those goals out. And this morning, ironically, when I was sitting down with my wife and my chief operating officer, we started to, we looked at the trends. How have things been going since January 1? Are we on target to reach the goal that we set? And we're, within half a percentage point of where we need to be. So we're right there. We're trending in the right direction. But unless you know those things, and it all goes back to setting goals, then how do you get anywhere? I mean, you have to set goals. But most lawyers don't do that. They're like, well, if I make more money than last year, I had a good year. Well, yeah, but how much more do you want to make? Because that'll tell you how many more people you need to help. And my experience, if you don't set a goal, chances are you won't help any more than you did last year. You might help less. And I've had that conversation with a couple of my colleagues, and it becomes an adversarial conversation because most lawyers, to be perfectly blunt with you, Olivia, I mean, they're just assholes. That's why people don't like lawyers, because we know everything. Even the stuff that we don't know, we know it. In fact, we're so smart, we even know what we don't know. And that's the problem with the legal profession. That's why people don't like lawyers.
And I will say, as you say that, I'm also laughing because I'm thinking of people I know who are lawyers, but I'm also thinking about you because we've worked together now for about a year, and you are very humble. You're not trying to, there's people out there who try to tell you how it is or tell you how to do business. I actually had a call this morning and I got off the call and I was laughing. I'm like, wow, that person was really trying to give me podcast advice and they don't have a podcast. They've never been on a podcast. And I laughed it off, but I was like, it was a pure example of people try to tell you what to do, and it's who you listen to, and it's understanding what you know and what you don't, and how to bridge that gap sometimes as well.
Yeah, so. I mean, that is a problem, right? I mean, I came to you because, you're now building my podcast too, because I don't know. I mean, could I have figured it out? I probably could have done. But I mean, even during our initial conversation, I'm like, holy smokes, I would have never have known any of that stuff, right? I mean, just not in my wheelhouse. And there's a really good book out there that it's titled Who Not How. In other words, don't try to figure it out yourself. Hire somebody who already knows how to do it. Why try to figure out how to build a podcast when I can hire Olivia because she already figured that shit out and pay her to do it?
I love that book. I refer to that a lot of times. I'm like, do you want to be a who or do you want to be the how? Understand what you want, where your time is. And that even gave me clarity as I was building my business of, okay, there are moments you have to be especially in growth, you can't just keep doing it all yourself. You need to bring it.
You cannot. In fact, we're at the point where, I still work at least 6 days a week, if not 7. And I can tell you, it has taken its toll on me. I was just, the last month I spent 2 of the weeks sick, and I went to see my doctor, sent me for chest x-rays, maybe take blood. You know what it is? There's nothing physically wrong with me. I'm just wiped. I'm exhausted, but I have these goals that I want to achieve, and I'm trying to, right? I'm trying to get there. So, one of the things we're working on is hiring somebody who can take sales calls on a weekend, because we get those calls and we get business. I signed up 2 cases myself on Sunday. So, but I can't keep doing that, right? It's just not physically possible at 59 to continue to work 7 days a week. Right. It is starting to take a toll on me. And, sometimes I say to myself, what's more important, getting rest or getting the goals? Getting the goals is more important. I'll sleep later. But my wife's like, yeah, but you may not get there if you keep this up, right? So again, it's who, not how. Let's get somebody to replace me who can handle sales calls on a Sunday and on a Saturday so I can try to shut it down. Mm-hmm. Can't tell you I'm good at that, but I will try.
And I hear you. There's times we'll talk where I'll be thinking, I'm like, I'll stop myself sometimes, Mark. I'll be honest. There's times I think of something for you and I'll go to text on a Saturday. I'm like, nope. Pause this Monday or Tuesday. Presence and being intentional with that. But I want to move on to really how you, not only the business aspect, but the law, because what you do is so truly unique. And there's so many people out there that need your help and understand they're not alone. So many people hear terms, and I want to go off the acts right now because those can be so confusing. Many people hear terms like the Baker Act or the Marchman Act, but don't really understand what they are and how they work. From your perspective, what do most people often misunderstand about those legal tools and a lot of legal tools and resources that are out there for people going through mental health and addiction and their families?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the laws. If I could just take 2 seconds to talk to you about how I learned about these laws. So the first law I read about was the Marchman Act. And that is a statute that's unique to Florida, and it allows us to put people into treatment for periods of up to 90 days. And you can repeat that process as many times as you want. It also has a part of the section that allows me to get an emergency court order without a hearing and basically have law enforcement grab somebody and get them to a place of safety. But when I decided who I wanted to help, who my target audience was going to be, and I started reading about the Marchman Act, there were only two lawyers who were using it. One was a divorce lawyer north of me, and the other guy was a lawyer that sues nursing homes south of me. And the guy that was north didn't go south. The guy that was south didn't go north. And shh, don't tell anybody about the Marchman Act because we're making too much money off of it, right? We don't want all these families that might need our help to know about it. And if another lawyer hears about it, he might start using it too. Well, I read about it and I did. I started using it, or I tried to, because remember, it took me 14 months to get that first case. But I started putting out video content. And the guy down south, that really rubbed his rhubarb the wrong way. So he went and registered the fictitious name to my website, which originally, as you pointed out, was drug and alcohol attorneys. And he sent me threatening emails, shut it down or I'm going to sue you, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just not the kind of guy that walks away from a fight. So I went and registered the fictitious name to his website and said, bring it, show me what you got. That got him to shut his mouth. But needless to say, over the years, him and I have done battle in the courtroom. He doesn't like me because I ruined it. And now there's 4 or 5 other lawyers who are dabbling in the Marchman Act. So the Marchman Act was my first tool. When I met my wife, she had a background in guardianship work, which was traditionally used for elderly people. She practiced up in Massachusetts for about a dozen years before she got divorced and came back down here. And what we figured out was we could use the guardianship statute not for elderly people, but for younger people who had these behavioral health issues. So as of 17, we started to do guardianship work too. Then, as I told you, my father passed away 11 months in, so that would have been 2017. It was January the 15th of 2017. And 2 days off that, I had a family member who got sucked into Florida's mental health system. And that statute is called the Baker Act. And that is a statute that basically allows the state to grab somebody, take custody of them, make them a ward of the state when there's a mental health crisis. Now, I didn't realize how important that experience would become to me until during COVID, when other lawyers started to call me about their clients getting Baker Acted, and there was nobody out there who knew how to handle these cases. And I frankly just read the statute and said, I think I could win these cases. And these days my team files 250 cases every year to get people out of the Baker Act. And I have pretty much become the state's leading expert on that statute because it happened to me, and I know what happens to people when they get sucked into Florida's mental health system, which is draconian and broken. Again, there are other lawyers coming along now because they figured they can make money off it. So those are the 3 statutes we operate under. And depending on the case, maybe all 3 at the same time, because it's not unusual for us to file a Marchman Act, which is fast, and a guardianship, which gives us more control together. And then in the middle of all of this, somebody has a mental health break and they end up getting Baker Acted, sucked into Florida's mental health system. So things can get crazy pretty quickly, right? We have 3 courts, 3 judges, but understanding how they work together is the key to it, right? That's the key to getting somebody where they need to be. Oh, by the way, people with behavioral health issues also get arrested. So understanding how the criminal system works in tandem with the behavioral health system is also important. I mean, I don't take those cases anymore. I refer them out, but I understand how it all works together. And I think that gives us a very unique perspective on helping people, because there's even the lawyers out there who are copying us do not have that skill set. They come from civil backgrounds, car accident backgrounds, divorce backgrounds, you name it, they've done it. And so that is one thing that makes us very unique and special. Even my 2 associates, one was a public defender and one worked for the Department of Children and Family Services. Again, their skill set is unique, but it gives us the ability to handle these cases and deal and take control of an out of control situation. But, when somebody's really sick, they're unpredictable. They might walk out of treatment. They might relapse. They might stop taking their medications. They might have some type of psychotic break. And we have to be able to respond to that accordingly. But our parents are emotional, and it's stressful.
Well, and that's what I was like hearing you say that as well. I was thinking, and you just gave the perfect leeway into it as well, is how do you decide in such a fast pace, so many things can be going on. Like you mentioned, sometimes you're dealing with all 3 pieces at the same time. what needs the attention right now? What is that first step? When someone comes to you, I'll ask it this way. When someone comes to you and they're in that crisis, right? Whether it's a family member, whether it's someone realizing it themselves, how do you hear the story and are able to identify where the real support needs to be in that moment and what then needs to come after it and build the plan?
Yeah. So, obviously we have the legal component, we have what clinical, and then we have what we call law enforcement. And I can explain those in a second. But the first part of what we do is what I call triaging the case, right? So you go to the doctor's office and they ask you, what's going on? How long's it been going? What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? It's about getting a history, right? Okay, great. Now we have this history. What are your goals here? What are you actually looking to achieve here? Right? For some families, it might be just enough to send somebody to treatment. But other families say, I want to send them to treatment, and I want to have access to their medical records, and I want to control their finances, and I want to stop them from, traveling and leaving. I want to I want to decide who they live with, who they spend time with. I want to take away their driver's license, right? It depends what their goals are. How much control do you want? How out of control is the situation? Because then we can tailor the relief. For a lot of families, just getting somebody into treatment is enough. But, you get families that come, that want more control. Okay, then we need to talk about a guardianship. But it all starts with really figuring out what's been going on here. And even though they're going through sort of a sales cycle, we still have to, in our minds, we still have to say, okay, this case could well get litigated. What can we actually prove? So now I got to put my lawyer hat on and say, okay, I got to worry about the rules of evidence, procedural law, substantive law. Can we actually win this case? Because if I can't win it, then we're not taking it. I'm not going to take a case where I don't think there's a very high likelihood of success. That's not fair to the family, and frankly, it's downright unethical, and I won't take that case. So once we know that we have enough evidence and we can move forward with the case, here's the options, right? Let's talk about what are the costs associated with hiring a lawyer? Now, obviously, the second part of all of this, of the recovery process, is clinical. Getting somebody into a clinically appropriate facility. Now, a lot of the time, Olivia, the clients are already working with maybe a clinician or an interventionist or a treatment center. Okay, if we've got that bit done, great. If not, we have 2 clinicians that are part of our team. They're sort of an a la carte option, and you could hire them to come up with the right program. One's a forensic psychologist, the other's a licensed clinical social worker, and they can help us to find the right facility that's clinically appropriate. So we have that down. Because obviously we go to court and the judge says, okay, Mr. Astor, I'm going to give you a court order. I'm going to mandate treatment. Where are they going? I don't know. Well, then what's the point of me signing this court order? Here's where they're going, Your Honor. Here's the name, the address, the phone number, and the email address of the clinical director. Bang, he puts it on the order. We're all clear on the same page. And so, having the clinical piece is key and critical. So, those are the two of the 3 components that we work with.
Yeah, you also mentioned law. And I remember when we first met over a year ago now, you brought that up. And I thought it was also so interesting because I don't really hear of law firms, and I talk to a lot of people doing what I do, that also really has a police team, right, as I may call it myself. But can you dive into that some more as well?
Yeah, so when I was prosecutor, we had our own internal police force. We used to call them investigations, but they were law enforcement. So in addition to being able to find witnesses, which I use them a lot for, if we needed, if a judge gave an arrest warrant, they could go actually arrest the person. And I thought, ooh, if I had a law firm, that'd be really cool to have inside a law firm, right? Have your own little police force. So that's what we have. So John is a retired federal agent, and he's got a team of investigators. So I told you about these Baker Act cases that we handle all over the state. So the facilities have to be served. And he does it for me all over the state, and he normally does it within about 2 hours of me filing the case, which is great, because that's how you get people out quickly, is letting the facility know, hey, your ass has just been dragged into court. Give me the client back, or I'll see you in front of a judge. But, we also use them because, if we're executing a pickup order that authorizes law enforcement to take somebody into a facility, I want my guy there to make sure it goes smoothly. But sometimes people aren't where they're supposed to be. He's got to go find them. I've also had people that run out of treatment. Rather than waiting for the police to go find him, if we need, I'll have John or one of his team members go find the person. So having that extra sort of reach has been really important to us, and it helps us to get good results. He's an important piece of the puzzle. He really helped big time. So I got my own little law enforcement agency, and so that can help. And when I had somebody that hit and ran my car and I had a license plate, he went and found them for me. Don't mess with my guy.
Yeah, don't mess with that. And that's the thing too, is it's all about having the right team in place and having different tools and resources to have the best outcome possible. And as you were talking about that as well, I kept hearing, okay, this will help create a smoother outcome, a more positive outcome, a less stressful outcome than the other potential aspect of it. And that being said, you're not just dealing, as we've talked about so far, the legal cases, you're dealing with human lives, families, and incredibly emotional situations 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10. How do you personally navigate the emotional weight that comes with doing this kind of work every single day? Because as you said, you work most times 7 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you have to understand where people are coming from. You know, for the most part, when somebody calls, they're going to go through our intake department. And, you know, Britton and Liana, who run it right now, I mean, they understand, you know, where our clients are coming from. And so, again, it's really part of the core values of the firm is understanding what we're really trying to do here and, you know, that we're here to serve. But I think it's also about having a very honest conversation with people. And, you know, I still do consults every once in a while. And I will tell the family, can we have an open and honest conversation about what's really going on here? Because sometimes it's not just their loved ones in denial, their family's in denial too, right? It's hard for them to accept the fact, probably because they've been playing the blame game as to whose fault it is. And really the irony is it's no one's fault. It just is what it is, because sometimes things happen in families. It's about having a conversation saying, look, there's a long history here. Here's what I think we need to do. It's also being honest enough to say, listen, you haven't seen this person in 3 months or 6 months. I don't think we have enough evidence for us to file anything. Here's an alternative that doesn't involve the legal system. Why don't I connect you with this person and see if we can use this modality to get this person into treatment and still achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve? So, I mean, you got to have empathy, but it's about, you know, having a difficult conversation with somebody and coming from a place of love and being honest with them and saying, listen, if you don't do this, causes have effects and effects have consequences. And if you don't, for whatever reason, you're not willing to move forward, that's okay. It's a no judgment zone here, but I'm letting you know what the consequences of not doing this. It's going to get worse. It's a disease, and any disease that's untreated typically gets worse. What does that look like? I don't know. Let's talk about what it looks like in a year or 2 years. What could be the tragic consequences of not taking action? Are you willing to go down that road? If you are, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to give you options. And then you tell me what works for you. And if nothing works for you, that's okay. We part as friends.
And I think that's really important as well, as giving all the options and laying everything on the table. I think so many of us are scared of what might be said in moments of we're struggling, we're emotional, that we don't want to be honest about it. So putting that level of transparency and no judgment zone is key in having difficult conversations, whether it is in situations like this or just personal life as well. Admitting we're wrong sometimes and walking through that as well. So, Mark, I want to end with this question because I can't believe our time is coming to an end. But after working with families in crisis for more than 25 years, what is one truth about addiction and mental health that you wish society understood differently?
That it is a disease. It's not a conscious choice, right? And again, sometimes you still have to have that conversation with families because there's a certain stigma attached to it. And, you know, sometimes you'll get one parent says, well, why don't they just stop? Well, their brain was hijacked about 5 years ago. They don't even think there's a problem here. So asking someone to solve a problem that they don't think exists is just not simply going to happen. And when you understand that it's a disease, and like any disease, it progresses, right? Then you can have an honest conversation about what treating the disease looks like. But if you're going to play the blame game, right? Oh, it's your fault, it's his fault, it's her fault. That doesn't help, you know. And sometimes one parent will say, well, just throw him out of the house, get him out of the house, right? And the other parent will say, no, we just need to keep him here, we need to support them. And I don't think either one of those two goals, either of those two directions really achieves the goal, which is to get somebody into recovery. Recovery means going into treatment and working the program, probably for close to a year if it's been going on for a long time, right? And saying to the family, let's look a year down the road, right, and how things could be. Right. But it all starts with the commitment, right? Getting rid of the blame, getting rid of the judgment, and saying, okay, there's a problem here. Let's address it. And then once you can make that commitment, then good things can happen.
And Mark, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
So our main website, our new website, is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Or they could just Google me. And thanks to you, they could probably find me all over the internet. So if you just Google Mark Astor and go to our YouTube channel where there's about 800 videos, some of them are with the other podcasts that Olivia's done an amazing job helping me put together. Remember, who, not how. Don't try to do your own podcast. Hire Olivia, silly.
And I didn't pay for any of that promotion.
No, I'm telling you, that's a freebie.
And I've truly enjoyed working with you. So I have been waiting for the time we can have this impactful conversation. And there's so much I want to dive deeper in. So I think at some point you're going to probably end up coming back. But thank you, Mark, for all of your insight today. And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation include: do not punish first and rehabilitate later. That is what Mark is here. Why he does what he does is understanding the importance that if you want change, it isn't about punishing someone first and then figuring out rehabilitation later. It's about what is their success goals, what is your success goals as a family, as someone who's supporting them, and getting them to the right rehabilitation situation and plan, right? Having that plan in place in life is so important, as well as I love how Mark brought up the business of law, because so many times I hear so many people say, oh, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I do this, and so I'm not in the business space. But as Mark brought up, there's always business, especially when you own a law firm, when you're in a law practice, right? If you own a doctor's office, it could be across the board, but we have to put that business hat on. And so I think it was really important in his story, as well as understanding what, in the sense of law, what the business of law looks like, and understanding those different pieces, and understanding we are all selling something. So stop telling yourself you're not a salesperson, right? Because we all put that lie on ourselves sometimes. We don't sell. I'm not good at sales. We all sell something as well. And to go a level deeper on that, the business is to sell law services. So when you're a lawyer, and what Mark talks about, the business he is in is to sell law services. And one challenge I want to give everyone today, based on our conversation, is how much do you actually understand about mental health and addiction services within your own state, the resources that you have? Because you might not be someone who is struggling, but you probably know someone who has struggled or is struggling currently. And having the right resources and the right tools can make the world of difference for someone. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Mark Astor. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.